consciousness? Well, that's a big question, isn't it? How about where is consciousness? Does it exist in our brains? Do we have to have all of our brain to be conscious? No, we don't. I think consciousness exists without any physical form at all, outside of the boundaries of time and space. So there's been a study done many times over that the planarian worm can actually have its head completely cut off, like its brain completely be severed from its body and regrow a completely new head and brain, and it retains memories. And how is that possible? The way that they do it is they train the worms to go through a maze, or they train them to not be afraid of certain colors of light, feed them liver under the light. So when they regrow their heads, they retain these memories of going through the maze, or they aren't afraid of the light. Now, I know that we're not worms, we're humans, but I still strongly feel that there's something to that. Perhaps we humans have been reprogrammed, recoded in our DNA to misunderstand consciousness. As we move full speed ahead into the age of enlightened machines, AI, and robots, I think we should take a careful look at what we are, so that we know what makes us human, so that we don't lose it. So if we're gonna start augmenting our bodies into, I don't know, superhuman things, we're opening up a big, huge can of mechanical worms. And I think we should understand exactly how our bodies really work, and not just rely on the paradigms that are not only outdated, but I think programmed into us with conditioning that was purposeful in keeping us from knowing the deeply hidden truths of our human nature. So, without further ado, let's talk about some things that I've been learning. Oh, but first, let's talk about transhumanism. It's a very real thing. Let's just ask Mr. Ray Kurzweil, who has been running Google's AI lab.
If you go back 500 years, not much happened in a century. Now a lot happens in 6 months. Technology feeds on itself and it gets faster and faster. It's going to continue, and in about 40 years, it's going to be moving so fast, the pace of change is going to be so astonishingly quick that you won't be able to follow it unless you enhance your own intelligence by merging with the intelligent technology we're creating.
This guy is freaky. He says computers will have consciousness in just 25 years.
As we get to the 2030s, you're not going to be able to tell a clear difference between human and machine intelligence.
When Ray Kurzweil makes a prediction, lots of folks listen.
He predicted the collapse of the Soviet Union, described the rise of the internet, and foretold the year a computer would beat a chess champion.
He's an award-winning scientist and engineer. Inventor Ray Kurzweil thinks that one day humans may be able to live forever.
I want to live as long as I can. I don't want to die.
I knew there was a reason I was keeping all this stuff, and he kept all this stuff. I do plan to bring back my father.
It's going to scare a lot of people.
It will be the universe waking up.
So we only use about 3% of our DNA. The other 97% is what scientists call junk DNA. I don't think that DNA is junk. I think it's been recoded. I think somewhere in our history, we've been infiltrated. And that's just my opinion. But studies show we're born creative geniuses, but the education system dumbs us down. I still think there's hope of breaking that conditioning. Now, I know that love activates our DNA. We're certainly not taught that in school. But we're also not taught about how to learn correctly.
He is able to read this fast and be tested on anything in this book. By the way, he is reading the book upside down because according to subliminal dynamics, the subconscious knows no bounds. Richard Welch, founder of the organization, who originally owned a speed reading company, says he began to experiment on how fast people could speed read, which led to the discovery of subliminal photography.
The word subliminal simply means outside of the conscious perception. And of course, photography means taking a picture. So that describes in detail actually what the phenomenon is all about. When you get to the point of eliminating subvocalization completely, going through the pages that it's physically impossible to focus on the words at all, at that point, something very different takes place from reading or speed reading. Number one, there's no sensation of reading because you're not doing the things that give you the sensation of reading. But you are literally taking a verbatim picture of the information as it goes by at the rate of 2 pages a second or faster. You're doing it with a completely different part of the brain than you read with. And what we discovered was a direct path through the brain to this very specific part of the subconscious, which photographs the material.
Welch says this is a gift we are born with, and the key to return is simple.
It's required that you deal with reading on a repetition basis, and I love this expression, until it sinks in. Well, where does it sink to? All we're doing is bypassing that need for that repetition, going back to the very natural, automatic way we learned as young children.
My friend Peter showed me this method of learning, and it's actually just like how he was describing it here. You hold a book upside down and you mentally photograph the pages. It actually works. The hardest part about it is forcing yourself to not read, because it isn't reading. It's going straight to the subconscious mind with information. Mental photography.
Here, children feast their eyes on a learning breakthrough. Bryson Gonzalez is only 8 years old. He was failing in school because of severe learning disabilities. Then, his mother took him to a mental photography seminar.
His work in school has changed a lot. Since then, he's come home with about 100% on every test.
Hers is actually a mild claim about the potential of mental photography. It can actually bypass dyslexia.
Participants in the course don't have to read any literature. Doctors, lawyers, business executives, and even this 11-year-old boy. They just flip the book or magazine front to back and vice versa. This is where the photographing takes place. The average person reads approximately 250 words per minute, understands 50% of it, and then forgets 90% after 48 hours. Welcher students have been reported to have an average reading speed of 25,000 words per minute.
Also, people retain about 90% of what they mentally photograph with this method. So that's just one of the ways that we've been taught the wrong way to learn or think. And now let's talk about another organ that we've misunderstood for a long time, and that is the heart.
As a part of a larger study aimed at discovering the biological impacts of music on humans, the researchers examined the heartbeats of 15 choir singers. The high school singers were asked to perform various kinds of songs while their heart rates were being observed. Lo and behold, when singing the same notes at the same times, the subject's pulses slowed and sped in unison as well. This and the other research ventures in the study are hoped to open doors in the medical field for the use of music in rehabilitation and preventative care.
Studies have shown time and again that when people sing together, their heart rates start synchronizing. And actually, it doesn't take very long at all for the heart rates of singers when they start singing together to become synchronized. There have also been recent studies done about dogs and their owners and how their heartbeats naturally sync up.
The purpose of today is to monitor the heart rhythms of both dogs and their owners. We're really interested in seeing the effect they have on each other.
Sienna, you just sit back and relax. See Sienna just a little bit uneasy on the couch. Started to get more anxious without his dog being there.
Their heart rates are both elevated.
That heart rate is really high.
It's probably a good time to bring the dog in now.
Their heart rates were significantly higher. It's starting to decrease now. You can see how Glenn has, decreased from up in the hundreds.
Lyrics come down from a heart rhythm of 130 on entry to 88.
Wow, I am really quite surprised. I can really see the coherence between the two of them.
Yeah, let's share the results.
You can see this is when you're apart, and once you're together, You can look at how close it is and how the heart has a line there, and I think that's really special. Do you feel that?
I'm feeling it now, yeah. Yes, I actually wasn't expecting to be so emotional about it.
And then as soon as Jake comes in, you can see that relationship there. You can actually see your heart starts to become aligned here.
And I really believe that the relationship between human and Earth is really special.
I can't put it into words. He radiates happiness. To me, it's a feeling. When I was driving here today, I wasn't expecting to start crying in the middle of a studio.
Heart rate variability is a study of how heart rate varies with time. It is easy and relatively cheap to measure. Here are the results of one of the earliest experiments, where my wife and I were holding hands and feeling love for each other over a 13-minute period.
This guy did an excellent presentation on the difference between the coherence of heartbeats together and at a distance.
The heart rate of one partner is shown in blue, the other in red. You can see that initially the heart rates are out of sync, but as the experiment proceeds, they come together more and more. By 450 seconds, the heart rates track well and become entrained for much of the rest of the experiment. This and other experiments confirmed what other researchers have discovered, that the heart rates of two people or of groups in close proximity will tend to entrain, particularly if they are in a closely bonded relationship. I was working away in Edinburgh, Scotland, while my wife was at home in Essex, southern England. We set up an experiment to simultaneously measure our heart rates as we felt love for each other at that distance. Here are the results of that 20-minute experiment. Once again, the heart rate signals seem to correlate in phase during the experiment.
So here you can see that even at a distance, the heart rate coherence is there.
Here is a comparison of the results from the first close proximity and the second distant experiment. But if we look in more detail at the first 4 minutes of the non-local example, we see something else. Correlation is also present at a much shorter wavelength. Notice how our heart rates are rising and falling together over a period of about 12 seconds.
Just to be clear, they weren't talking on the phone during this time. They were just 318 miles apart and, quote, feeling love for each other. So just thinking about each other, their heartbeats synced up, and you can see the coherence. It's very clear.
Statistical analysis indicates that it is unlikely that these correlations are the result of chance.
The heart is in fact a lot more than a blood pump. It sends powerful commands to the brain and to the rest of the body in 4 ways. There's a neurological communication. Heart has its own very complex nervous system, sending information to the brain and the head. In 1983, something most people don't know, the heart was actually reclassified as part of our hormonal system because it produces several very important hormones. The heart is an electrical organ. It produces by far the strongest source of bioelectricity in our bodies, up to 40 to 60 times stronger than the second most powerful source, which is our brain.
If the eyes are the windows to the soul, the heart is the doorway.
The heart receives information first and then relays it to the brain.
Participants were attached to sensors to record their brainwave activity, heart activity, and heart-brain interactions.
So we set it in a computer, push a button, 6-8 seconds later, be shown a photograph.
Participants were shown pictures of car accident victims, snakes attacking, and other disturbing images. On the other end of the spectrum, the pictures included flowers or sunsets. The photographs were randomly assigned for display to the participants. The results were surprising.
This is the combined result of 30 precognitive experiments. This is the point where the subject presses the button to display the picture. This is where the picture appears. This is the reaction to the emotional picture, and this to the calm picture. These are what one would expect. But the really interesting result is that several seconds before the emotional picture is displayed, there's a response from the autonomic nervous system, a sense of imminent danger.
The body responded even before the picture was displayed.
What we found was that not only did the body indeed respond prior to the event, but it was the heart that responded first.
The heart's response was not only faster, but the signal it sent to the brain varied depending on the emotional content of the picture.
It appears as though the heart accessed a field of information not bound by time and space.
People seem to start anticipating just the shocking pictures several seconds before the computer even decides what picture is going to be shown.
What's important to know here is that before the computer had even selected randomly a picture, the heart had a physical response that preemptively knew what to prepare the body for.
What we'll see here in the post-stimulus region is the expected response to the emotional pictures. There is the steep rise of her sweat glands essentially responding to that shocking picture. What we're interested in is this pre-stimulus area here, where there's a little bit of evidence that the skin conductance, the limbic system, is anticipating a future shock.
I thought it very telling that they used during these experiments pictures of snakes attacking, because the snake is often thought to be recognized by some extrasensory perception. Scientists have theorized that our brain has a special corner just for recognizing snakes. So anthropologist Lynn Isbell was running through a glade in central Kenya in 1992 when something suddenly caused her to freeze in her tracks. I just stopped in front of a cobra, she says. It was raised with its hood spread out. Isbell, who's at the University of California, Davis, says she has spent the past couple of decades trying to understand how she could have reacted before her conscious brain even had a chance to think cobra. At first I thought it was luck, she says, but now I'm pretty sure it's not luck. It's a reflection of 60 million years worth of evolutionary history working on my visual system. Well, maybe. I don't know, doctor. We have our forward-facing eyes, she says. We have excellent depth perception. We have good visual acuity, best in the mammalian world. We have color vision, so there has to be some sort of explanation for it. Primates in parts of the world with lots of poisonous snakes evolved better than elsewhere, Isbell found out. It's no accident that lemurs in Madagascar have the worst vision in the primate world, she says. There are no venomous snakes there. But if the primate visual system really evolved to detect snakes, there should be some biological evidence of this in their brains, she thought. So she teamed up with researchers in Japan to study the brains of 2 monkeys that had probably never seen snakes. And if you hear my puppies running around in the background, they're playing. The researchers measured the activity of individual brain cells while showing the monkey images of snakes, faces, hands, and simple geometric shapes. The researchers found something remarkable in the pulvinar, a part of the brain's visual system that's unique to people. There are neurons that are very sensitive to snake images and much more sensitive to them than the faces of primates. That's surprising, because most monkeys and other primates have brains that are highly sensitive to faces. The finding appears to explain Isbell's experience in Kenya long ago, when she stopped herself before she even realized she was seeing a cobra. Quote, this part of the visual system appears to be the sort of quicker, automatic visual system that allows us to respond without even being consciously aware of the object that we were responding to. What I'm wondering is about the neurons that are very sensitive to the snake images. Are those intuitive neurons from our intuitive heart? The study goes on to say that even monkeys raised in labs where there are no snakes can quickly learn to fear reptiles, and it's still unclear whether the brain response of the monkeys in this study show they were truly afraid of the snakes or just had an innate ability to recognize the potentially venomous reptiles. I think that we can definitely say that if we measured both the heart and the brain, rather than just the brain, we would find the original stimulus to come from the heart, because it is the preemptive organ that tells the rest of our body to respond before the stimuli has even been introduced into our physical environment. In other words, our heart is actively protecting us from danger that is present before it is actually present. It tells us beforehand what we're about to experience and makes it so things are perfectly timed to avoid imminent danger. In truth, we don't know how much of our safety is guided by our heart. And what guides our hearts? This man jumped into a freezing lake to save a dog. What a hero. He didn't have to do that. It's risking his own life being that cold out there. But that is how we all should be treating each other, with that kind of love, using our hearts to guide us.
Basically, from a surgeon's point of view, the heart is a pump.
So is our heart just an organ to pump blood, or could it be much more?
I was on the transplant unit, and the heart transplant recipients were reporting receiving the memories, feelings, food preferences, fears, musical preferences of their donor.
That man there's name is Dr. Paul Pearsall, a psychoneuroimmunologist and author of The Heart's Code, who's researched the transference of memories through organ transplantation. After interviewing nearly 150 heart and other organ transplant recipients, Pearsall proposes the idea that cells of living tissue have the capacity to remember. Dr. Pearsall conducted a study entitled Changes in Heart Transplant Recipients that Parallel the Personalities of Their Donors, and here are some of the results of that study. In one case, an 18-year-old boy wrote poetry, played music, and composed songs, was killed in an automobile accident. And a year after he died, his parents came across an audio tape of a song he had written entitled, Danny, My Heart Is Yours. This song was about how he felt he was destined to die and give his heart to someone. The donor recipient of his heart was named Danny, short for Danielle, and she was an 18-year-old girl that when she met the donor's parents and they played some of his songs for her, she already knew them literally by heart. She was finishing the lyrics, and she had started playing guitar and written songs of her own about how her lover saved her life by giving her his heart. She knew what her donor looked like without ever seeing a picture of him, and she said that she and he had been lovers in another time somewhere.
Around the world, hundreds of organ recipients have reported disturbing experiences. France, 2005, a woman is haunted by vivid images of her donor's death in a car crash. Georgia, 2007, a man given the heart of a suicide victim kills himself in exactly the same way. Professor of neurology Dr. Gary Schwartz has been researching this phenomenon for the past 15 years. Transplant patients claim they have acquired personality traits from their donors. One anonymous case involves two young girls, an 8-year-old who receives the heart of a 10-year-old murder victim.
After the heart transplant surgery, this young girl began to have dreams. And the details were so specific about what the murderer looked like and details regarding the murder, that this information was then passed on to the police. That information helped this man to be caught and ultimately prosecuted.
What better witness than the one person who knows what a murderer looks like? The dead girl's heart was in this live girl who started having dreams about it. What more proof do you need that there's something to this, that the cells or the DNA house memory?
One woman who got the heart of a boxer was the most quiet, demure, easygoing woman. Left the room when her husband would watch football. She's got this heart of the boxer. Now she watches football and yells and swears and punches and everything.
Most impressive of all is our heart's magnetic energy, 5,000 times more powerful than the brain.
More powerful, and does talk to the brain. Maybe we should be paying attention to that. Maybe the brain, even though it thinks it's us, isn't.
Claire was the first case to appear in the public eye. The memories and changes were uncannily like her donor.
It was a couple of days after the surgery that the press came in to interview me, and one of the reporters asked, now that you've had this miracle, what do you want more than anything in the world? And I said, I'd die for a beer right now. It just came from me. And I'm not a beer drinker. And I was a little mortified by my flippant answer to such a profound question. The first thing that happened were the food preference changes. Suddenly, like green peppers, finding them, putting them in my food, I used to take them out. And the first time they allowed me to drive, I found myself going to a Kentucky Fried Chicken place to buy chicken nuggets, something I never did before. I found that my handwriting, instead of going from right to left, it was going from left to right. These things were sneaking up on me, little by little.
Like most heart transplant recipients, no detail was revealed to Claire about her donor.
It wasn't until a few months after the transplant that I had a dream in which I'm with a young man. I awakened from the dream feeling that this for certain was my donor. And in the dream, his name, I knew him as Tim L.
Remarkably, the donor's name was Tim Lamarand. What's more, he loved beer and green peppers. Chicken nuggets were found in his motorcycle jacket when he died. It was only when she finally met her donor family that she pieced everything together, giving her confirmation that everything she was experiencing had extraordinary similarities to her donor.
The family of my heart verified all the experience I was having.
Claire Sylvia actually received the heart and lungs of Tim Lamarand. The way she described her dreams was much like an out-of-body experience. I think it's a certain lesson in consciousness we should all be aware of. But she described him as being in an open field, and it was very light outside, and they were playfully romancing together, and his name is Tim L., and when they embrace, she feels as though she inhales him into her, and she knew they were going to be together forever. So when she found out this was actually real and he was a real person, she was kind of freaked out.
Only when the heart is profused with blood from its new owner does it spontaneously start beating again.
Boy, the heart started beating right away, didn't it? Pretty nice.
Some heart transplant recipients feel a change so profound they are battling with a complete transformation. Bill felt he was being driven by a completely new personality. Previously a successful and hard-working businessman, he put his career aside and began a new life.
The man was transformed into an athlete.
Just months after his operation, Bill began training excessively.
I know on certain things that I had no interest or whatever in before. It had to come from somewhere. It makes sense to me that it came from my donor.
Brady, Bill's donor, was a Hollywood stuntman.
Woo! Bill was taking a drive one day when a Sade song came on the radio, and he basically started bawling. He didn't know why. It turns out that Brady, his heart donor, was really, really moved by the music of Sade. He didn't figure that out until he met his donor family and put it all together, but that musical love transferred over with Brady's heart.
There's enough of this that I think we have to take it seriously.
A neurologist, Dr. Andrew Amour from Montreal in Canada. He observed there was more to the heart than the current scientific model could explain.
People have not had the facility to see the heart in any other form. We have developed the ability, with all the electronics, to record more than just the muscle on the heart, but the neurons on the heart.
As he looked closer, he noticed something remarkable.
I started to record outside the heart and found neurons that no one had expected.
He had discovered a sophisticated collection of neurons in the heart, organized into a small but complex nervous system. Suddenly, our traditional views on the brain and intelligence were being challenged.
The heart itself has a quite complex nervous system. All the types of neurons and the way they're wired together. The heart has a functional brain. Dr. Armour has pictures of it. I mean, there's definitely a little brain in the heart. And the types of neurons that are in the brain and the heart have also been demonstrated to have both short and long-term memory.
Until the recent past, science has glorified the brain. The questions we should be asking as scientists is that the only place these things happen? When we know about the heart and its remarkable energy and its connections with the brain and its neurons and its hormones, if we know that, shouldn't we be asking, is there another source of intelligence?
The heart was always considered a center of the being, the source of spiritual wisdom and insight, thought, emotion, and connection to the divine. The ancient Egyptians believed that all thought and life was done from the heart, which is why they threw away the brain after the pharaoh died, but they left the heart in the body. They felt that the being would need it in the next life, so they left it there, but the brain was useless. Western scientific thought places the heart as just a pump. However, in the last several decades, science has begun to go full circle in realizing and understanding what these ancient civilizations knew and taught. In the field of neurocardiology, scientists have discovered that the heart possesses its own intrinsic nervous system, a network of brain cells with over 40,000 neurons.
We're becoming cyborgs. We're becoming transhumans. Transhuman is an evolution from human to post-human, where we're no longer exclusively biological. So the cyborg is having all sorts of add-ons. We have clothes, we have eyeglasses, we have earplugs. Now these are very, very basic, early add-ons to our biology. We're also having prosthetic parts, inorganic hearts. We will see much more advanced prosthetics in the years to come. Eventually, we'll have entirely prosthetic bodies.
Post-human, I think, will be post-biological. We'll gradually integrate more and more technology into our bodies. We'll be replacing our organs with more efficient organs. We'll gradually replace this neural tissue because it dies off after a while. It's easily subjected to chemical damage. So eventually, I think we'll replace our brain cells with essentially computerized parts. It'll be much more efficient, much more powerful.
To become cyborgs able to compete with the rapid evolution of computers, we first have to understand how our own brains function. Deciphering our consciousness is another question, but the experiments of Dr. Yang Dan have proved that in principle, it is possible to read and to understand the brain. She managed to tap the vision from the brain of a cat and to reconstruct what the cat sees onto a computer screen.
So this is a digitized movie. It's a short clip from Indiana Jones.
Here we see the two images next to each other. On the left, the image that was shown to the cat. At the right, the image that is tapped out of the cat's brain.
The picture has a lot of random flickering, the noise. That's probably the noise of the actual neurons, because they sometimes fire spontaneous spikes. We consider those noise, but maybe they reflect something else, maybe the thoughts or something. But we can't distinguish that. So when we use all of those, thinking that they represent visual information, this is the reconstruction that we come up with.
It is the first time an image was tapped from a brain. It proves that we can read and understand the grammar of it. The face is recognizable, but I still can't avoid the impression that the face has something cat-like.
So we can take part of the hippocampus that's a circuit, we can cut out parts of it, throw it away, and we replace it with a microchip. So now the whole circuit works just like the biological circuit. Incoming temporal patterns look like outgoing temporal patterns, just like it does for the biological piece of tissue. But now there's a microchip in there.
One problem that remains is how to connect the chip to the brain. Today's technology uses tiny electrodes, but in the future, another option might be to put some brain cells directly onto the connection points of the chip. They would then be guided to form connections at exact points within the brain in order to establish the perfect interface.
I'm part of another project that is funded by DARPA that's trying to understand exactly that. I mean, how is information represented in the brain?
Science is supposed to have all the answers. We have here, for all practical purposes, a normal human being, except for his electronic sensory control system, of course.
First, we say that if a computer could play chess, then it would think like us. And then we get a computer to play chess and we say, that's really not thinking. And the answer is that we don't really know what thinking is. Machines do a pretty good job right now at thinking. They don't do as good a job at creating, although we don't really know what creating is. And they don't do a very good job at having a soul, but we don't really know what a soul is.
It's a conservative statement to say that by 2025 we'll be able to look inside your brain, see everything that's going on, all the interneuronal connections, all the synaptic clefts, all the neurotransmitter strings, and create a huge database and copy down every salient detail, and then reinstantiate that information in a neural computer of sufficient capacity and create basically a copy of the thinking process that takes place in your brain. We can tap the secrets of intelligence that exist in, let's say, the human brain. Once we've scanned that information, we can also understand it, see how it's organized, improve on it. We can extend it, the memory 1,000 times bigger. We can make it faster. We can expand the perceptual capabilities.
To transfer your mind to a computer seems to be the ultimate dream of many scientists. To liberate us from our old body that is becoming obsolete in this technological world.
So in a way, mind uploading is a shortcut around artificial intelligence that will allow us to have machines with human minds.
I'm hoping that we could fit on a CD-ROM. That's 600 megabytes. And I'll bet that that's all you need to copy a person.
What do you think? Do you think that's all you need to copy a person? I think there's far more than we will ever be able to understand. And in trying to play the creator, we're skipping a bunch of steps. And it's dangerous because we're going to lose what is special about us. And that's a shame. But I think it's kind of supposed to happen. All of this is part of the plan. So As long as we continue to love each other, that doesn't mean trust blindly. That means use discernment. Guard your heart. Guard your thoughts. But do love. Do love your brethren. Because it's pretty much just going to get weirder from here on out. So much love to you guys. Know that we are one, and we'll get through this.